gentle reminder that we're still big, but it's the movies that got small. As that killer of the standalone blockbuster, the MCU, attempts a reset while simultaneously trying to make us feel nostalgic for the movies that its corporate overlords mercilessly annulled. Welcome to Macclevoid at the Movies. So here it is, the great team up, Deadpool and Wolverine. First teased way back in X-Men Origins : Wolverine, when it was comprehensively cocked up. They got the right man, Ryan Reynolds, but they took from him his single defining characteristic, namely his shtick, his motor mouth humour. That's a bit like having a Superman that doesn't fly, or a Gambit that doesn't throw playing cards, or I don't know, an MCU that doesn't entertain, as it hasn't been entertaining for quite some time now. So what are we to make of it? Are we happy that these characters are finally getting together after all of the in-movie hype and all of the meta hype, all of the hype on social media and the constant shit posting between Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman and all the rest of it? Well, I think ultimately we have to say that it is a movie of no consequence. That what's actually happened is that the impossible has been achieved. We're finally sorry for James Mangold. You didn't think that was possible, did you? After Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny, you thought you'd go to the grave despising James Mangold. So did I. But I couldn't help but feel sorry for him as I watched this movie, because I thought, here's a man who tried to make a serious coda to the X-Men franchise. The final... not the final X-Men movie, of course, but the final movie featuring Wolverine. Tried to send him off in a way which was heroic and grounded and, you know, rooted in something like real drama. A standalone movie with dramatic integrity. It was like a 1980s Clint Eastwood movie, but with mutants in it. And I liked it. And we all liked it, didn't we? And we all thought, that's a satisfying ending for that character's arc. And then along comes Ryan Reynolds and, director Sean Levy, and indeed Hugh Jackman himself. And they say, no, fuck that. Fuck that. Logan is a relic from an era of movies which has now passed into obsolescence. That's back when we cared about the content, where we cared about stories, and they had meaning, and we were inducted into the closed world of the film. You know, 1978 you went to see Superman, didn't you? And if you were alive, and you felt it was a completely realised world, and you came out of it and you thought, gosh, that was wonderful escapism, but that is a myth that I can go back to time and time again and invest in, because it's a story that's inviting me to partake in it. It is not reflecting all the nonsense and shit that I know about the real world. Same was true in 1989 with Tim Burton's Batman, wasn't it? But Deadpool and Wolverine, is a movie that says all of that stuff you loved, all of that stuff you paid to see, let's say since the year 2000, we're talking about primarily the X-Men series, Fox's X-Men series, all of that was just raw material for this movie's gag factory, for this self-referential, self-reflexive, postmodern machine. When I was a student, long time ago, I had an idea for an art movie, an art film, an art house piece, if you will, and it was called Postmodicon, the self-referential spectacular. And the idea was just to place a person in a chair facing the camera and have them continually wink at the audience for a long time. What I'd hoped to do was record, I don't know, about 3 hours of winking and then slow it down so that the whole thing could be watched, you know, something like, I don't know, 2 frames per second over the course of a whole day, something like that. Yeah, it would be the sort of shit that they'd put in the Hayward Gallery on South Bank in London and all sorts of things, and people would look at it and go, gosh, that's really interesting. It makes me think a lot about composition and meaning and whether a film simply can just refer to itself without any other content, without any dramatic impetus of its own, a thing that only refers to itself. Deadpool and Wolverine is Postmodicon, but with Marvel characters. It's a bit like an Austin Powers movie in which Austin Powers teams up with Sean Connery's James Bond, if such a thing were possible, or Roger Moore's James Bond, a well-known James Bond. One day, digital filmmaking, of course, will allow this to happen. Don't say I didn't warn you. You know, Disney will have the image rights to certain actors, and their estates will be paid millions and millions of dollars so that all your favourite actors can live again in whatever awful new configuration the suits would have them exist in. But you accept, I would hope, that an Austin Powers movie in which Austin Powers was teamed up with the real James Bond would diminish James Bond. Because it would both acknowledge that body of work while undermining it with humour that deconstructed those movies and made them ridiculous as a result. That's sort of what Austin Powers did to the James Bond series, isn't it? That's why it was necessary to reboot James Bond with Daniel Craig, because the likes of Die Another Day got so close to Austin Powers that the audience couldn't take the series seriously anymore in the post 9/11 age. That's why Daniel Craig had to come along and be all serious and introspective and real for 5 movies. Now, whether that's a good idea or not, the point I'm making is this. To bring Hugh Jackman into the MCU, to bring Hugh Jackman into a Deadpool movie, by definition makes Hugh Jackman's Wolverine a less serious character. Forget that he's a straight man in the partnership. Forget that Jackman gives a perfectly reasonable performance as this iteration of Logan. Not we learn the one that died, but another one from the multiverse. God help us. Doesn't alter the fact that the ending of James Mangold's movie is literally desecrated on screen, but we'll forget that for a moment. The point is this. If Wolverine and Deadpool can exist in the same universe, then, well, the movies that you grew up with from X-Men onwards themselves become a little less meaningful because they're just fodder for jokes. There are 6 writers on Dead Men. Dead Men? They are dead men, all 6 of them. 6 writers on Deadpool and Wolverine, on Tango and Cash. And between them, they can't come up with a serious story onto which to impose rapid-fire jokes. Instead, the movie exists to create jokey scenarios, which is not quite the same thing, is it? If a film's just a machine to set up gags and facilitate cameos and to wryly comment on the corporate decisions that have got us to where we are today, is it really a movie in its own right? In its to all intents and purposes, is it a movie at all? What is it? It feels movie adjacent. It feels universe adjacent. It feels like a little fucking cafe in a siding where all the characters and all the audience go to have a good old chinwag about everything that's been done to them for the past 20 years. You know, I tell you what it's like fucking Comic-Con or something. In film form, if you can imagine the horror of that. Decades of movies, decades of movie attendance, billions of dollars in ticket sales. All that time, all that craft, all these characters, all those stories, all that investment from audiences over 20 years. For what? So that Ryan Reynolds can plug his shtick for 2 hours? That's what it led to? It led to that? It led to the proverbial winking at the audience for 2 hours? Is self-deprecation on a corporation's part enough to forgive its sins? Do we forgive Disney for buying up 20th Century Fox and for folding all of these different characters from different franchises into one Deadpool of stuff? Do we forgive them? They'd like you to forgive them. That's what this movie's all about. It's a little bit of an apology for all of the misdirection and trans-universal nonsense that we've experienced since Endgame. It's a bit of an apology for that period that we've had of listlessness in the MCU, where instead of characters and personalities we like, we have sort of bland, one-dimensional characters involved in an overarching plot that's so complicated that it can't be followed. The MCU at the moment feels listless and pointless and meaningless, and here is a self-referential movie featuring, you know, 2 big hitters from the Marvel Universe saying, oh, we know we fucked it up. We know that it's all gone to pot. But come on, let's just have a giggle about it. Let's have a laugh about it. We'll press the big old reset button. We'll forget about the multiverse and we'll just carry on in a new timeline which will feature the X-Men, because essentially this movie exists to introduce them into the MCU, and it'll be lovely. Okay? Sorry to have wasted your time for the past 5 years. Let's forget all about it. It isn't often, admittedly, that you see a movie that does sort of apologise for past transgressions. But is self-deprecating humour enough? Do you forgive Disney? Viewed a few giggles during Deadpool and Wolverine. Is that enough? I mean, it's got the tacked on sentimentality. You know, like Jack and Jill had the thing about real twins meeting at the end of it after that obnoxious 90 minutes. The equivalent in Deadpool and Wolverine is a sort of a reel that reminds us about the old X-Men movies and the fun old times we used to have with them. Is that enough for you? Did that bit of sentimentality at the end make you think, okay, fine, they've just spent 2 hours rubbishing all of those movies I used to love and making a mockery of them, but yeah, and reducing characters I used to care about to jokey cameos, but all right. It's sporadically funny, so all right then, have this one on me, Marvel. Is that how you felt? So I don't know that Deadpool and Wolverine is a movie, really. It's highly aware of itself. It knows it's just a sort of bridge between eras. That's all it talks about. Bridging, literal bridging. Two characters forming a bridge between eras toward the end. It's all about nostalgia. But what modern blockbuster isn't about nostalgia? The question is, at the end of it, you know, what is there for us? I looked into the audience of teenagers, and I just saw kids who were sniggering along, thinking, this is great fun and utterly disposable entertainment. This is the TikTok generation, the Insta generation. But they're never going to love Deadpool and Wolverine the way that people of my generation loved Batman or Superman. I just feel sad for them, in a way. Where do movies go from here? This is all there is. What's next? What happens when you've used up all the real movies, asset strip them, use them as raw materials for cameos and out of character humour and all the rest of it, nostalgic moments? When you've had all of that, what's left? What comes after Deadpool? What's Deadpool going to cameo in 20 years' time? Ryan Reynolds makes a joke in this movie about Disney having Hugh Jackman on the hook until he's 90. Well, that might very well be true. But by the time Hugh Jackman's 90, at this rate, there's not going to be nothing like real movies left for him to appear in. That's what scares me, and that's what should scare the living piss out of you.
Whoever you think I am. You got the wrong guy.
You were always the wrong guy.
So, Deadpool and Wolverine is certificate 15 for, I don't know, Ryan Reynolds' shtick and Hugh Jackman slightly debasing a character who hitherto had a really great run and the sort of perfect ending, but now doesn't have the perfect ending. Is now a sort of MCU thing that can just be brought out of storage whenever the fucking occasion suggests itself. And I suppose also for self-awareness, because self-awareness in movies can be fun, but in franchise movies I always find it to be rather tedious. I didn't invest in Batman as a child, only for Michael Keaton to show up in with Ezra Miller 30 years later in the fucking Flash. Retrospectively, these things don't celebrate the movies that came before them. They diminish them, I believe. What do you believe? So with a very heavy heart, and kudos to the Marvel execs who have turned a disaster into a quite astonishing money-making opportunity. Thank you for watching this videogram presentation. Until next time.